My name is Leonard Augustine Choo. I am a professional costume designer and a director at the Textile and Fashion Federation of Singapore. I have a keen interest in Western portraiture, historical costume, and I have a master in fine arts. Art, and especially portraiture, is important in fashion history because prior to the invention of photography in the early 19th century, it was one of the main ways to immortalize images of people and what they wore. Portraits were a form of image creation in the collective imagination of the masses, much the same way we regard images of celebrities on magazine covers and guess at their personalities. Just by looking at the amount of real estate that clothing takes up in portraits, you can easily understand just how important these garments were to the subjects. Besides being a way of capturing a likeness or a moment in time, renderings of clothing were a loud and clear display of wealth and status for those being portrayed. So one example of this is in the so-called Ditchley Portrait of Queen Elizabeth I by Marcus Garretts the Younger. In this portrait, Elizabeth is wearing a white satin gown with a long pointed bodice, a skirt draped over a French farthingale. This exaggerated silhouette is augmented by large padded undersleeves with hanging over sleeves that reach almost to the floor. She has an open French ruff and a wired gauze collar behind that. This impressive, transformative silhouette dominates the painting, and combined with the passing of the storm in the background, the Queen's feet planted firmly on a map of England and the pink English rose pinned to a ruff, it's meant to be a demonstration of British, if not divine, power. This opulent decoration not only emphasizes her moral and divine right to rule, but also the legitimacy and richness of her worldly authority. Divine authority to rule is certainly not the message put across by the 1783 painting of the 18th century French Queen Marie Antoinette by Elizabeth Vigée-Lebrun. When it was unveiled, this portrait caused an uproar for many reasons. The Queen had been depicted in a simple dress that closely resembled a chemise, a cotton undergarment, and so it appeared that she seemed to be posing in underwear. The way in which Marie Antoinette was portrayed, with an air of modulated naturalism and in an aesthetic of natural simplicity, went against the iconography of the French queens of the past. In the world of fashion, however, the white dress spread like wildfire, and paired with the rising affinity for Greek and Roman culture brought on by the Enlightenment, the dress became a staple of the fashionable elite across the Western world. This new trendy garment was specifically associated with the Queen, earning the name chemise à la reine, or the Queen's dress. It is interesting to consider that some scholars think the proliferation of this cotton dress in the fashion world played a part in prolonging the viability of cotton plantations, and thus the slave trade across the southern United States. An example of how one fashionable garment in a portrait can have some truly far-reaching consequences. In contrast to the changing fashions in portraiture, it is the consistency of Queen Victoria's garments in her later years that has become iconic. Following the death of the love of her life, Prince Albert, in 1861, Victoria went into a period of deep mourning from which she never truly recovered. She wore black mourning dress for the rest of her life until her death in 1901. This portrait of Queen Victoria by Heinrich von Angeli in 1885 is a fine example of what she looked like and wore. Unlike the portraits of the other queens we've seen before, the garment Victoria wears is regal but simple. It is a black silk dress with white lace cuffs and a veil and a fur-trimmed train. To provide some context, during their 21 years of marriage, Victoria and Albert rescued the monarchy by extolling simple domestic virtues that were accessible to ordinary people. The consistency of her mourning fashions shows a shift in focus away from ostentation and towards Victoria as a person. This staunch fortitude resonated with her people and cemented her regal authority as Queen of the British Empire.